All right, welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today we're going to be unpacking, well, a pretty huge phenomenon. Something that's captivated, I think, billions around the world, the Indian Premier League. And think of this as kind of your express guide to understanding how this league went from its start to becoming what it is today.
Yeah.
Drawing on all the material you guys sent in.
Yeah. The IPL, I mean, it's more than just cricket, right? I mean, it's entertainment, it's economics, it's fascinating. And what's really interesting to me, like going through the sources, is to trace how did this league, how was it founded and how did it get to where it is today? We're gonna kind of pull out those key milestones so that you understand not just the what, but also the why.
Absolutely. So let's get into it. The IPL officially began in 2008.
Okay.
It was orchestrated by the BCCI, right?
Yeah.
The Board of Control for Cricket in India. So I guess, looking back to those early days,
Yeah.
what was the thought process? What was the impetus to launch this league?
Well, it's interesting to note that T20 cricket was really gaining a lot of momentum internationally. I mean, it's fast-paced, it's high-scoring. Fans around the world were really loving it, and I think the BCCI really recognized this. And so, drawing inspiration from these international successes, they envisioned a domestic league that could kind of, bring that excitement and appeal directly to the massive Indian cricket fan base. So the key takeaway for you guys here is that it was really about strategic timing. It was about capitalizing on a global trend to create something, that was uniquely Indian.
Yeah, definitely. And the initial structure, right, involved creating 8 franchise teams, each representing, a major Indian city.
Yeah.
So right away, you've got this kind of built-in rivalry, right? This kind of built-in local pride. So what cities were part of that original lineup?
Well, that inaugural season, you had franchises representing Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, Delhi, Bangalore, and then Hyderabad. Back then, they were the Deccan Chargers. Mohali was the Kings ex-Cod, Punjab, and then Jaipur as the Rajasthan Royals. So as you can see, it's very similar to, a lot of the other major sports leagues, where you've got these city-based franchise models. And that really does a great job of injecting that strong sense of local identity and that kind of competition from the get-go.
Definitely, yeah. And then thinking about that first ever match, it's always interesting to look back at those, the beginning moments. So do we remember who faced off in that first match?
Yeah, so the first IPL match ever was on April 18th, 2008, and it was between the Kolkata Knight Riders and the Royal Challengers Bangalore. And, I'm sure a lot of you remember Brendan McCullum from KKR. He just delivered this explosive innings. It really set the tone for what the IPL is all about, right?
Yeah,
that excitement. It was like a statement game. And I think from that moment on, everybody was paying attention.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that innings is still talked about to this day. So who ended up lifting the trophy that very first season?
Well, the champions of the inaugural IPL 2008 season were the Rajasthan Royals, and they were, led by the legendary, the one and only Shane Warne. They were considered the underdogs by many, but Warne's captaincy, his tactical brilliance, his leadership, it saw them through to a pretty memorable victory. It was a great underdog story. It kind of showed that anything could happen in this brand new league.
Definitely, yeah. I think it speaks to the unpredictable nature of T20 as well. So let's fast forward a little bit. Your sources point to a period of expansion and growing popularity, between 2011 and 2015. So what really defined that era?
Well, if we're looking at the growth trajectory of the league, this is where the IPL really cemented its position, as a global sporting powerhouse. We saw 2 new franchises added in 2011. You had the Pune Warriors India and the Kochi Tuskers Kerala. And, the sources do point out that Kochi's journey was very short-lived. They were only around for 1 season. But again, it shows that, the league was still finding its footing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. It's a reminder that, not every new venture will be a long-term success. And you mentioned there were a couple of teams that really started to, dominate during this time, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Chennai Super Kings, Mumbai Indians, they really became the teams to beat, Their consistent performances, their strong leadership, their passionate fan bases, all of that really contributed to the league's growing popularity. They started to build those legacies that we see continuing to, play out today. So I think, think of them as the early standard bearers of success in the IPL.
Definitely. I mean, back then, you couldn't talk about the IPL IPL without talking about Dhoni and his cool head leading CSK or the growing dynasty of MI. But it wasn't all smooth sailing during this period, right? I mean, the 2013 spot fixing controversy definitely casts a bit of a shadow.
Yeah, and it's a good point because I think it highlights the importance of maintaining integrity in the sport as it grows, right? So the 2013 spot fixing scandal was definitely a big deal. Investigations revealed that some players were involved in manipulating specific parts of the game for betting purposes. And so even though the overall outcomes weren't fixed, that kind of activity, it really does damage the trust, right, that you, the fan, has in the game. And so it led to bans for several players. And I think that, sent a very clear message from the BCCI that they had a zero tolerance stance on corruption.
Yeah, definitely. It was an unfortunate but necessary kind of turning point, I think, in the IPL's story. Yeah. So that kind of brings us to this unique phase, the suspension and reorganization between 2016 and 2017. Mm-hmm. What led to that kind of major shakeup?
Well, if you remember, in the aftermath of that controversy in 2013, there were, the Mudgil Committee and then later the Lodha Committee, and they made these really strong recommendations about the governance of the IPL. And as a consequence of those recommendations, both the Chennai Super Kings and the Rajasthan Royals were suspended for 2 seasons, and that was in 2016 and 2017. So it was a really dramatic move, and it temporarily kind of reshaped the competitive balance of the league.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a void in terms of the established fan bases and the rivalries. But as they say, sometimes opportunity comes from disruption. So there were 2 new teams that stepped in during this period, right?
That's right. So they wanted to maintain that 8-team structure. So they brought in the Gujarat Lions and Rising Pune Supergiant to replace those 2 teams that were suspended. And it actually, it created some really great opportunities for new players to shine, new fan bases to kind of emerge, albeit, temporarily. But what's really interesting is that the Sunrisers Hyderabad, who were an original franchise, but, they hadn't been as dominant, they really took advantage of this opportunity, and they actually won their first IPL title in 2016. And I think that shows you the unpredictable nature, the competitive depth of this league.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows that any team can rise to the occasion. So then 2018 comes around, and it marked the return of CSK and RR. Mm-hmm. So what was the impact of their comeback?
Oh, well, the fans were ecstatic. I mean, it was a huge deal. And I think it really lived up to the hype. Chennai Super Kings, I mean, talk about a comeback story, right? They went on to win the title in 2018. And I think for a lot of people, it was like reaffirming that legacy, that they had built. And it was really fueled by the experience and the leadership of their core players. And so I think for you guys listening, this really highlights the strong emotional connection that fans have with these franchises.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the old guard was back.
Yeah.
But your sources also point to this continued success of Mumbai Indians during this period, between 2018 and 2021.
Yeah. What's really remarkable about Mumbai is their consistency. They had those early successes, but then, they went on another incredible run, winning titles in 2013, 2015, 2017, and then back-to-back in 2019 and 2020. And so at that point, they were the most successful team in IPL history. And I think that really speaks to their team building, their on-field execution. It's a level of dominance that you rarely see in such a competitive league.
Yeah, definitely. 5 titles in 8 seasons it's pretty remarkable. Mm. We also have to mention the 2020 season. It was a unique one.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, COVID, the pandemic, significantly disrupted the 2020 season, and they actually had to relocate the whole thing to the UAE, and that was a logistical challenge, but they were able to pull it off, and I think that really showcases the league's adaptability and commitment to delivering, even in the face of global challenges.
Definitely, it speaks to the resilience and just the overall strength behind the IPL. So bringing us a little more up to date, right? 2022 onwards, there was another big development. 2 new franchises were added. So tell us about them.
Right. So if we look at the evolution of the league, it's always evolving. And the addition of the Gujarat Titans and Lucknow Supergiants in 2022 really kind of marked this new phase of expansion. It broadened the geographical representation and of course, introduced those new rivalries and fan bases. And what was really remarkable is that the Gujarat Titans, they actually won the IPL title in their debut season in 2022. Talk about making an entrance, right? It was was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, winning in your very first season, that's a statement.
Yeah.
And then the most recent season, 2023, how did that play out?
Well, 2023 saw Chennai Super Kings, back on top, lifting that trophy. It was their 5th IPL title. And this was a big one because it tied them with Mumbai Indians for the most championships. So, the debate continues, which one is truly the most successful team. But I think, that rivalry between CSK and MI, it's a central narrative to the IPL story.
The plot thickens. So, to give everyone listening a really clear picture of the league's history, your sources provided a full list of the winners from 2008 to 2023. It's really a journey through the history of the IPL.
It is. So if we go back, you start with the Rajasthan Royals in 2008, then you've got Deccan Chargers in 2009, then CSK takes over with back-to-back wins in 2010 and 2011. KKR, the Kolkata Knight Riders, they lift the trophy in 2012 and then again in 2014. Mumbai Indians get their first title in 2013, and then they win again in 2015, 2017, 2019, and 2020. Sunrisers Hyderabad were champions in 2016, CSK back on top in 2018, then Mumbai again in 2019 and 2020. Chennai wins in 2021, Gujarat Titans have that incredible debut win in 2022, and then finally Chennai Super Kings in 2023. So, I mean, when you look at it all laid out like that, you really get a sense of the competitive landscape and all those cycles of success, right, that have happened in the league.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And, as we've been talking about, it's those two teams, MI and CSK, that have really been the most successful, right?
Right. I mean, Mumbai Indians and Chennai Super Kings, they're the titans of the IPL, 5 championships each. Then you've got Kolkata Knight Riders with 2 titles. And then, Sunrisers Hyderabad, Rajasthan Royals, Deccan Chargers, and Gujarat Titans, they all have 1 title each. So, I mean, obviously MI and CSK, are the dominant forces. But I think it's important to note that all these other franchises, they've had their moments of glory. And that's what makes the league so dynamic.
Exactly, yeah. It really shows that competitive spirit, even with that kind of, sustained success from those two teams. So I guess, stepping back, looking at the big picture, what would you say are some of the biggest impacts that the IPL has had, not just on cricket, but kind of beyond the sport itself?
Right.
If you think about the wider impact, I mean, it's been huge. So first, you've got the economic impact. It's the wealthiest cricket league in the world. I mean, the amount of investment it's brought into the sport is enormous. It's created so many jobs, players, coaches, support staff, and then of course there's the broadcasting, the sponsorships, the revenue. I mean, it's given the BCCI so much power in global cricket. And then secondly, the IPL has given this incredible platform for young Indian talent to develop. They get to train and compete alongside, the best international players. And so I think, think about all those players who might not have had this opportunity before the IPL. And then third, it's blended cricket, Bollywood, and big business. It's this really unique entertainment spectacle, and it's attracting this massive, diverse audience. And finally, it's global. I mean, the viewership is immense. It's bringing cricket to new markets, new fans all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a cultural and economic powerhouse. So, the 2023 season is done. But, everyone's already looking ahead. What can we expect in the next, the coming seasons of the IPL?
Well, the exciting thing is that the IPL is always changing. So, teams are going to be constantly trying to improve, their strategies, their scouting, looking for new talent, both in India and internationally. And they'll be adapting, right, to how T20 cricket is changing. We've got new teams, and that suggests the league is still growing. And the competition, it's only going to get more intense. I mean, every team wants to challenge Mumbai and Chennai. They want to create their own legacies. So, I mean, I think the 2024 season and beyond, it's going to be